Hi, I am Patrick Chuka, and you're welcome to African Boy Bible. I'm excited you get to join me on this new journey, on this new path, and I'm curious to see where that takes us. I'm happy you're here. This is a project that I have going on, and I call it the African Boy Bible, where we're going to be asking questions about spirituality, about history, about politics, about art and science, about relationships, about life in general. I have had such a massive spiritual awakening over the past 5 years. There is so much that I've had to process about myself and about the world at large, and I've come to the point where I have integrated a lot of those lessons, and I've been called to share things that I've learned from my life experiences. And I know you might be wondering, what life experience can a 24-year-old have? So far has been moving from Lagos, Nigeria, all the way to the United States completely on my own at the age of 17. This was something that I did without any plan, without any family or connections in the United States. I was just completely blind in this journey, and everything that I encountered along the way was a surprise because I really didn't know a lot about America or the United States. I really didn't have a lot of knowledge about their history and what has transpired on the soil of the United States for over 1,000 years now, and how that still impacts their society till today, and how that impacts the rest of the world, especially where I came from, because we see the United States and we see the West as something that is so distant from us. But the irony is that they impact every single facet of our life on a daily basis. And on this podcast, we're going to talk about that. You can subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. We're going to be sharing so much in the coming months. This is season 1 of the podcast. I don't want to ramble on the internet, so I'm going to try and structure this podcast as nicely as I possibly can, so you're able to digest a lot of the information that I'm going to be sharing, or spiritual curiosities as I call it. Today, I wanted to talk about things I wish I knew before I turned 20. I personally have been through a lot in my short time on earth. I'm currently 24 years old, and there's certain things that I wish I knew while I was growing up. Things that I wish, my parents probably taught me, or my community instilled in me. And as I've grown, I've come to see how lack of knowledge in these aspects have caused more harm than good in my life. And this video is more of a time capsule where I find my younger self in the ethers and give them all the advice that they needed. I did not have older siblings that could have shared these with me, and I desperately needed a lot of advice growing up. I sort of grew up as a loner. I grew up alone. I grew up just being responsible for a lot of things as a child, and having very little help and support. And I am finally getting to a place where I'm able to support myself, and I'm able to really balance out my life and my mental health and everything, all the challenges that come with life. So I was alone most of my life. I felt alone most of my life. Even the times when I was surrounded by people, I was completely alone. I wish that I was able to really tell myself that you're not alone. You're not alone. And there are invisible beings around you that want to see you succeed. They want to see you happy. They want to see you safe. In fact, they're working overtime to make sure that you're safe in every situation. And this was so palpable for me in my life when I entered a myriad of dangerous situations through my journey in the United States. Like, it was one after the other, to the next, to the next, to the next, of the most dangerous situations you can imagine. Even experiences that mirror slavery were the dynamics that I was in. But somehow I was protected through all of this. I was given intuitive guidance that helped me traverse this scary terrain that is, the unknown. And I had a lot of anxiety because I felt like I was doing it all on my own. I had a lot of depression and a lot of mental health struggles that, were breaking me down and making me so vulnerable to predators. But I just could have really understood that I was not alone. And, maybe people that don't really believe in God or the idea of a higher power, I can understand that. But even at that, there are even lesser powers that care about you, and more closely are your ancestors. If you ever knew your grandparents and they've passed on, they are actively watching you and making sure you're okay. And another funny thing too in terms of this is the fact that we are in this human experience. We're all succumbing to the human experience, the pain, the emotional struggles, the trauma. It's just part of the human experience. When we evolve out of this plane, we are met with our true selves, which is our soul bodies and our souls, the kind of power they have outside the 3D realm. I wish I knew that a lot sooner. I think my life would have been a little bit more easier, and I think I would have had a lot more peace and calmness as I approached very challenging situations. Which brings me to my next thing that I wish I knew, was the fact that every challenge is a test. Every challenge is a test, and there's no right or wrong way to approach a challenge, because either way you're gonna learn. I faced a lot of challenges. I faced a whole lot of challenges. I still face challenges, even like my challenges haven't stopped, because in life, when you take a path that isn't conventional or a road less traveled, you're met with roadblocks and obstacles every step of the way. And it just sort of makes sense why people don't often take this path, or people don't often succeed in this path, because it is kind of difficult to begin with. And the biggest challenge was in California. I had $0 on me. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any connections or family or friends. I was just like completely clueless and completely just lost in California and completely broke. And that was a challenge. That was a huge challenge. But the test was how much faith can I have? How much trust in the unknown can I have? Because the life is filled with so many unknowns. And if you approach every unknown with fear, you're just living half a life, you know. But when you approach every unknown with strength, resilience, faith in the unseen, and trust in your own capabilities and skills, you know, you're able to achieve more. You're able to really find your way around very complicated situations. I know when I arrived, I brought with me a red box, and in those boxes I had like my pencils and my paper, my sketching pad, and I was able to find accommodation for a few weeks. And in that time, I was able to get commissions done, like portraits of people. I was able to get commissions and make some money, just, you know, hitting the ground running and trying to get some drawings out and trying to market my work. Luckily, one thing led to the other thing. I was able to find more sort of stable income. It wasn't necessarily super stable, but it was just enough for me to get around and figure out, you know, what next steps were going to be. The main success in that situation was just the fact that I had faith. And even if I didn't have faith in God or have faith in spirit, I had faith in myself. I was able to figure things out no matter the situation. And that just built up on my faith. And it got to the point where I was in situations that I couldn't possibly escape on my own. I couldn't possibly figure out on my own, and I had to rely on something more. And in those moments, I really cried out to God. I grew up in the Catholic faith, but I rejected Christianity as a whole. I rejected Christianity. I rejected religion as a whole. I wasn't interested in those beliefs because I felt like they were very biased. Most of the beliefs were frankly very toxic. In my opinion, as a young child. So I rejected religion, and in that way I rejected the idea of God and spirit, because I couldn't separate spirit from all the religions that exist. And the big question I asked myself while I was growing up was, if there is one God, then why are there so many religions? And that is a question that this podcast is going to answer. So thank you for joining. Through the challenges that I had, I was able to really come in contact with this spirit, because when you are in a country of 300 million people and you don't know a single person, and there is no one that you can actually trust that is around, there is no sense of safety, you're homeless, you're hungry, you're cold, what do you do? What do you do in those kind of situations? And it was such a risk. Moving to the United States was such a risk, but it was a risk that was forced upon me due to the economic situation being faced by my family, and this was like a way out of that. And when I was in a situation where I was desperate, you know, all I had to rely on was, you know, the powers of the unseen, the things that are not visible to us, hoping that something was going to be there, hoping that, you know, somebody's hearing my prayers and hearing my pain and is able to help me or send help. At the time, I didn't realize that my prayers were being answered, because help started to come. A lot of help came my way, little by little, just enough that was able to help me get through the next challenge. And this is something that has shaped my perspective on how the universe works and how life is supposed to be and how we're supposed to live our lives. Imagine a life where we don't depend on structures and governments and political bodies, but instead we depend on God and each other, our communities, building safe communities that we can all come together and actually do the thing that religions claim to do, which is support each other and make sure we all thrive together. I think that could be very beautiful. Something that I also wish I knew before I turned 20, which is during my journey, is the idea of self-love. I think self-love has been bastardized a lot in our generation, where it's akin to narcissism, and when you love yourself, that means you just think you're all that, but the opposite is actually true, because a lot of us carry so much self-hate and we mask the self-hate in self-deprecating jokes. What would it look like if a world, we were taught as children to embrace ourselves, and not just embrace ourselves, embrace our unique skills, our unique personalities, our unique likes and preference, instead of trying to fit into the mold or trying to fit into a culture or subculture? How about embracing individuality and authenticity? The reason why we hate ourselves and why we find this hard to do is because when we decide to be authentic, we're immediately shut down by the people closest to us. They are repulsed by our display of originality and authenticity because it does not align with the order of the day or the order of society. This is something that is a huge mistake because it breeds a lot of self-hate and a lot of self-distrust, because if you can't trust yourself to have your own back, how can you trust anybody else? And then we live in a world where everyone doesn't trust each other and everyone is insecure, but it all starts from the root cause, which is lack of self-love. Something else that impacts our ability to love ourselves is our childhood experiences, and going through very painful and highly emotional childhood experiences and having no one there to really comfort us or really provide that sense of safety that we need to integrate that experience. Then we're left feeling like a burden. We're left feeling like we don't fit in. We're left feeling bullied and disrespected and traumatized based on some harsh childhood experiences. How can you love yourself when all of these things happen to you? It's very difficult to really ground in the mind of a child that the things that happened to you were not because of you. They happened because of things beyond your control. And yes, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility to show yourself compassion, love, and be present with yourself as you try to unravel the experiences that you've had as a child. And unraveling this is very important because we live in a world where people run away from their bad childhoods and they miss a lot of the gems that awaits them as they clear that up, which can help foster being a more fulfilled, a more mature, and a more awoken adult. That's why we have a lot of children in adult bodies these days, because they're just traumatized children that haven't really sat down to do the inner work. And the first place to start in this is loving yourself. I wish someone told me that. I wish that was something that was common in the world and was being taught to children, is, love yourself, love yourself, love yourself. And from that place of self-love, you're able to love the people around you. You're able to pour in more love into the world. You're able to share more. You're able to create more. You're able to be a beacon of light because you love yourself, not because you're perfect, not because you're beautiful, not because of you're handsome, but you love yourself because you've been through so much and you deserve love. You deserve love. You deserve to be loved unconditionally. A lot of the love that you've been seeking out in the world, what happens when you can show that love to yourself? And showing that love to yourself is a practice. You don't wake up one day and say, oh, I love myself. When I realized that I actually hated myself, and I didn't really hate myself, I hated my life, I hated the people around me, I hated, the environments that I grew up in, I hated so much that felt like it was a reflection of who I was. When I gained awareness and saw how this was an issue and how this was causing problems in my life, I had to address a lot of this self-hate and really find the root causes of these issues and transform them into self-love. This process took over 3 years of transforming inner wounds into self-love and self-empowerment. I don't even think I'm fully there yet. I think I still have a lot of work to do on myself, but I would say I love myself now much more than I did when I was, in my early 20s. I have always heard about intuition and I've always sort of seen it in movies, but I've never really seen it play out in real life until mine kicked in full gear. And my intuition kicked in the second I stepped into the United States. I had to figure out so much so quickly, and I didn't have anyone to ask any questions. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't have any directions. So this was happening all subconsciously. I was able to tap into my intuition. Out of being so desperate, I was listening to the internal nudges that I was having just out of desperation. So if it told me, go here, I went there, and going there, I found something that helped me get to the next stop and I found something that helped me get to the next stop and I kept going. If I was lost, I had to sort of settle into my mind and settle into my intuition and then follow the directions I was being given on a subconscious level because I had no other choice. Imagine doing this for over 5 years. That sort of trained my intuition, just having that as my only resource to rely on, even when it came to interacting with people and people I could trust, because believe me, I've been burnt by a lot of evil people on my journey so far, and I can choose to carry the trauma, or I can choose to turn that into power and knowledge and wisdom and use that to even sharpen my intuition further, which has happened. So trying to understand who I could trust in the United States and how long I can trust them for was something that my intuition helped me a lot. As a child, I wish this was something that I knew was a thing, because I would have probably started a lot earlier learning about intuition, learning how to harness intuition, learning how to separate your intuition from fear, knowing what to listen to when. There's a lot that goes into that, and again, we're going to discuss all of that on this podcast, so stay tuned. Family is so important, and I've always been a family person. I've always sacrificed myself for my family. I've always just wanted to give and give, and family is super important to having a balanced life as an adult. Like a lot of the mental health struggles that a lot of people in my age group go through are because of unstable families. Yes, they could be picture perfect and have the Christmas cards every year with all smiles, but families are so unstable, they're so dysfunctional, and that is a breeding ground for highly unstable adults. You cannot escape this. It's like your family is the foundation of the house you're going to build as an adult. The family you're going to build is going to be built on the family you came from. So it's hard to escape a lot of the impact family does have on us. But the best that we can do is, if you have a good family, great for you, amazing. We love that. My family is so amazing, and I love my siblings, I love my parents, and I feel very lucky to be in a situation where, there's a lot of peace and harmony in my family. But I've also experienced family dynamics that are very toxic, very draining, very poisonous, very dysfunctional. So I know what that experience is like, and I've seen the children from those families and how they grow up and how they function, and that contrast has taught me a lot on how we perceive our families and the kind of families that we build, because a lot of times, we grow up wanting revenge families, to have families that are better than the ones that we come from, only to fall back into the same cycles that our parents were in. We have to gain awareness and really study our family dynamics, study our family tree, study our history as a people. I had to study my own history just as an Igbo person in the world, seeing how the history of my people, post-colonialism, pre-colonialism, a lot of the history, a lot of the migrations that has happened, to better understand who I am as a person, because I am a product of over 5,000 people before me. Their experiences impact how I perceive the world today. So it's critical that we gain this experience and make a vow to have healthy families and raise healthy children, if that is the route you want to go down on. Personally, I understand why many people in my generation want nothing to do with children. They don't want children, they don't want kids. I personally do not want kids. If I was going to go down that route of having children, I probably would do my very best to raise well-adjusted kids. Which brings me to my next point on well-adjusted kids is, your childhood traumas do not define you. Your young adulthood traumas do not define you. Your early adulthood traumas do not define you. None of the bad experiences you've had in life defines who you are. They're just experiences. It's like going to the beach. It's an experience. Doesn't mean it defines you that you're now a surfer because you went to the beach once. Yes, it might impact your life on a day-to-day basis. You might feel a lot of emotions from these experiences, but that is the beauty of life in many ways. It's not always going to be positive emotions. It's going to be positive and it's going to be negative emotions. They're all gonna blend into this experience that we call life, and you can choose to find the balance and find ways to add more good into your life, or you can choose to drown in the darkness and let that define you. But I'm here telling you today that your childhood traumas do not define you, and this was something that I wish I knew before I turned 20. I'm glad I know it now. In my younger adulthood, I was very attached to the traumas that I've had as a child. There are so many of them, and I'm not trying to really trauma bond right now, but I have healed from a lot of them. I have gained higher perspectives on a lot of them, and I'm able to use my art as a way to transmute those painful experiences into something that is beautiful. That is the path that I've chosen for myself, because then I can either let those experiences define me and make me into someone that I'm not, or I can choose to ground myself in who I truly am and use those experiences to enrich who I am as a creative. I use my past experiences to help my art flourish, to discover new things themes to transmute my emotions. Like when you're feeling very angry, you're feeling very hurt, there's a lot of red in that. I'm currently working on an art series where I am exploring the color red to its fullest potential. That is a lot of the emotions I'm trying to get across, and it comes off as passion, it comes off as dedication, it comes off as strength, it comes off as so many other positive things. But red is such a color that is a visual representation of pain. So expressing that pain and using red as a color to create beautiful things is a way that I transmute those experiences from bad to good while still remaining who I am as a person. It takes a lot of work. That is why I wish I started earlier in this understanding that your experiences do not define you. You define who you are. You set the standard for yourself, and you are the one that has the power to tell your story. No one can tell your story for you. You are the only one that has the experience. You're the one that knows what happened to you, and you have the freedom to tell your story in the most beautiful way possible. And that is the beauty of life. I wish someone told me how important it was to really hone a lot of skills in your teen years, because all you have is time. All you have is time. You might feel like you don't have a lot of time, but as I got older, as I keep getting older, I'm having less and less times to learn new things. It's so important that we learn as many skills as we need to in our teenage years. You don't have to settle for anything. You can explore everything. Like if you want to bake, if you want to crochet, if you want to do pottery, if you want to learn how to code, things that you can do with your hands are so important at this stage of your life before you transition into your 20s, because you're going to need them. You're going to need a lot of skills to survive. You're going to want to learn how to cook, and not just make a simple meal, but make a meal that can compete with takeout, or make a meal that is satisfying, make a meal that is nourishing to your body, because that is very important as an adult. But nobody tells you until you're in those situations. And this is a huge one. This is a huge one that I wish I knew before I turned 20. And not only do I wish that I knew this, I also wish this is more common knowledge. And it is: your sexuality and your gender identity are valid. They're as valid can be, regardless of what it is. As long as you're not hurting anyone, you're fine. Whether it is nature or nurture, it doesn't matter. It is valid. It is valid, and it doesn't stop you from achieving anything in life. Your gender expression isn't a one-way street. It's more like a spectrum from hypermasculine to hyperfemininity, and it just sort of flows through that every second of every day. And that is valid. That doesn't need to have you confused. That doesn't need to have you feeling shame. That doesn't need to have you feeling alone. There are many people like you. A lot of people are really good at hiding it though. But you just are not that kind of person. So your sexuality is valid. Your identity is valid. How you perceive yourself is valid. And nobody can tell you who you are, because only you know who you are. But in our society today, we have the opposite of that, which is sexuality is not valid. You are not a healthy person if you deviate from the social norms. You are a menace to society if you don't present in a way that is conventional and accepted by all. Who cares about what somebody else does or how they dress or how they look? Who really cares? Why are we so obsessed with other people's lives when we can just care about our own lives? That is how I feel, and that is something that I wish that I was told a lot growing up was, you're just valid. Yeah, you might be different, but you're valid. It's fine, because it is. But even in the validity of your sexual and gender expression, there is a need to understand that sex is sacred. Sex is a sacred act. It's not something that you do all willy-nilly. It's not something that you give to anyone and everyone, every Tom, Dick, and Harry. It is sacred. It's something that must be preserved for the right one. The person that brings you the most peace, the most safety, the most love, that is the person that deserves to have access to your body in any shape or form, because it's such a sacred act. In our world today, of course, that is not the case. Hookup culture is a thing, but that is the opposite of what it should be. We're not supposed to exchange our bodies with people that we don't know very well. We're supposed to do that in a committed relationship where two people have come together to really understand the lessons of life, and in that safety, in that space of love, you're able to share yourself more intently. And this is something that I wish I knew. Luckily, I have been a very shy person, which I feel has saved me from getting mixed up with the wrong people. But this is something that is super important to know, which is sex is sacred. Your mind controls your reality. How you think of the world is what the world is. How you think of yourself is what you are. How you think of every situation is what it is. Your mind controls your reality. You can use your thoughts to your advantage. You can use your imagination to your advantage. You can imagine a better self, and you will get guidance on how to access that better self in the physical. You can imagine a better life. You can imagine a better future for yourself and be able to do the work it takes to get yourself there. Your mind controls your reality way more than you think. That is why fear is so dangerous, because fear is a poison to the mind. Fear is something that goes in your mind and stops you from doing what you want to do. It stops you right there on the spot because you have a fear of something. I feel like my biggest fear is the fear of judgment from people. But I had an experience recently where I was just so judged wrongly by a bunch of people. And, I feel like that experience just showed me really how fear is the only thing that holds us back, because now I don't fear judgment anymore because I already have been judged. The worst things have been said about me. So now I don't really care anymore. And that has put me in a space where my mind is free to imagine new things and create new things because I'm not being held back by fear anymore. Fear in many ways is false evidence appearing real. That is like the acronym I use for myself to remember when I feel fearful, and in those moments when I can see a situation and see how it is a false evidence appearing real, I'm able to tune into my heart space and ask my heart, what do you want right now? What do you want from me? What is the best course of action? Is the best course of action to extend an olive branch or protect myself and give myself love first? At the end of the day, we all want love. At the end of the day, love is the thing that we are fiending for, we're fighting for, we're pushing ourselves to find, we're going out of our way to find this love. But that love exists in your heart space. That love exists in your heart chakra, and fear blocks that. Your imagination also comes from your heart, because when you're in a good mood, when you're in a happy mood, you're able to dream up real worlds. But when you are in a depressed mood, when you're in a fearful mood, that darkness magnifies the darkness that you can think about. So you're thinking of the worst case scenarios, you're imagining the absolute worst. I can tell you this because I've been through it over and over and over again. Like, imagine a child just being lost in a foreign country all by themselves. Like, I was going crazy, but somehow I could survive that. I survived it through connecting with my intuition and having faith, which helped me get through it. And now that I'm out of it, I can look back and see that a lot of the things that were a problem was just my mind. There were problems in my mind that I projected out into the world and made the world seem darker than it was, made it feel more dangerous, made me more anxious, So having to fix that problem, I had to get into my mind, see what was there, and walk my way backwards by starting with the kind of life that I want to have for myself and thinking of that life. Because when I was homeless, I didn't think that I would ever have a home. I didn't think I would ever have a place I can call my own. Ever in my life, it felt like that was never going to happen for me. I'd always depend on people. I'd always be homeless. I'd always, be on the streets. But I was able to use my mind to create a space where I had a home, had my own home, and also feel that in my body as well. What does that feel like? Me being homeless, I was scared. I was anxious. I was unsafe. So the opposite is imagining having a home and feeling safe in that home, feeling happy in that home, feeling free in that home, and tapping into those emotions while you're thinking about it. And I can say it took a while, but now I have my own home. And the biggest lesson from that is the fact that my mind controls my reality. Like, the things that I think for myself, the things that I can tap into are the things that are available to me at any time. So this is something that I experienced and I have learned from my experiences that I'm sharing now. And I wish desperately that I could have told my younger self, like, hey buddy, calm down. Your mind is the problem here. You are the problem here because you're thinking all of this negative stuff. You're worrying so much, and that worry is manifesting in every action that you take. How are you going to make it out? How are you going to succeed? How are you going to be free? Or you can just have faith that things are going to work out for you, connect with your intuition, which is going to guide you on how it's going to work out for you, and dream big. Never lose hope. Never stop dreaming. Never stop. Like, even if you're 90 years old on your deathbed, never stop dreaming, because you don't know what's going to happen in your next life. You don't know if all the dreams you've had is just setting the stage for your next life. And even if that feels far-fetched, you can experience your dreams right here, right now, just by tapping into your imagination and trusting that it's going to happen for you. The things that you want, your unique wants, they've been put there so you can tap into them and bring them into reality, materialize them into your reality. And I believe that is exactly what it is, because that has happened for me over and over and over again, where I've been in bad situations and I've used my mind to bring myself out of those situations. We're gonna talk talk about that on this podcast. So stay tuned and subscribe. It's funny because we don't really get told also how much risk there is to life. There is a risk for everything. There is a risk for literally everything that we do. If you eat an apple, there's a risk that you could be eating, a maggot in that apple. Or if you buy a house, there's a risk that you're buying a house on land that has legal issues attached to it, and you're going to get swept into legal issues, and you're going to have a lot of things to deal with. There's a risk that if you open your home to a roommate, that roommate could be a psychopath. There is a risk to everything that we do in life. If you want to chase your dreams, there are risks attached to those dreams, because you can't dream alone. You can't create your dreams by yourself. You need people. So who are the people that are going to be safe for you, and who are people that you can trust in helping bring your visions to life? There is a risk for everything, and the key is not to run away from the risk. The key is to lean into those risks and learn about them and figure out the best risk to take, the best risk that you're willing to handle the consequence of that. I think that is where the power lies, because you can take a risk, but the consequences might just be too big for you to handle. Or you can take a risk and it could be a smaller risk, but it could be a stepping stone to where you want to get. It could also help train your tolerance for risks that helps you be able to take bigger risks in the future. It's a process. It's like levels. There's levels to the risk taking and creating your life. I approached adulthood not understanding that everything is a risk. So we're often left disappointed. We're often left unbalanced by how things turn out, because we're not expecting how bad things can go, but things can go very, very bad. And all we can do is hope that we're being guided to the correct path. Hope that our faith is enough to carry us through. Just hoping and dreaming. It's like a cycle that you just have to keep going. You dream, you hope, you take risk, you hope, you dream, you take a risk, and you just keep going and you keep going. And as you learn the lessons on your path, you're gonna gain more wisdom, and life is gonna be a little bit more easier. Before I forget, I was gonna also talk about, or something I wish I knew before I turned 20, was on the concept of friendships. When you become an adult, you are gonna lose a lot of friends. You're gonna lose a lot of friends. You're gonna find it harder to make friends. You're gonna struggle a bit with making friendships, but the friendships that you're gonna make are gonna be amazing as long as you are very mindful of the kind of friends, you prioritize quality over quantity, and you stay true to yourself. A lot of the friends we had in childhood were not really friends. They were just people around us, very convenient people, acquaintances, because of, say, by proximity or by relationships with parents. They're not really our friends. Those people, you grew up and you probably cannot relate to them one bit. So you're gonna lose a lot of them, and it's fine. It's fine. It's okay. Don't freak out. You might be alone for a bit, but you're not alone. You have your spirit guides. You have your ancestors. You have the universe. You can talk to them anytime. They're there for you. If you want them to, communicate to you through your phone, they're more than happy to do that. They're more than happy to get in touch with you through your phone one way or the other. You just have to be on the lookout for those messages and believe them when you see them. When you're ready for good friends and better friends, they're gonna find you. And I know I'm sounding very spiritual, very religious, very God, very woo-woo in this video, like the Californians love to say, woo-woo. I came to the United States as an atheist, just did not believe in God one bit. Felt like my life was proof that God did not exist. But my journey and how I've survived some of the darkest shit that you can possibly think of, I've come to learn that God is very real. Spirit is very real. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I understand everyone has to come to that knowledge on their own time and have that be authentic to them as well. But something that I did do growing up that I wish is more encouraged is exploring all the religions, exploring all the faiths. I was Catholic, I was Protestant, I went to a mosque, I practiced Hinduism, I got into Buddhism. I really explored a lot of these religions, trying to find what the real fact was. I've read Bible cover to cover multiple times in different versions, so I have very good knowledge on the Bible. I went to the mosque for over a year, and I was even renamed to a Muslim name. Particularly love the Buddhist religion or the Buddhist sect because it resonates the most with me. The connection to nature, the connection to your inner self, the connection to calmness. Those are things that I highly resonate with, because when you grow up in a chaotic environment, you're only left with seeking the opposite. I was able to plot out all the dots in these different religions, in these different faiths, and see where there was alignment. And then I could see how I began to research more on how these religions even came to be. And I found out that no religion is brand new. Every religion is just a combination of other ones or inspired from something else. And a lot of the mythology that we have, Christianity as we know it, is modern mythology. It came from old mythology as well. The stories of Egyptian gods are very present in the Bible, just under different names and in different scenarios. It feels like they were rewritten for a new generation of people, just as a guide to help us find the clues that were left on what reality is all about, because I think we're in a puzzle. It's a matrix, it's a puzzle piece where we're here to figure things out for ourselves and use that knowledge to advance our lives in ways that are healthy, collectively and individually as well. So the advice would be just follow where your heart leads you. No matter the church, no matter the religious faith, there's always something to learn. And those lessons, you're going to be given a heap of lessons and you have to put the puzzle pieces together and you're going to find the truth within all of that. No one part of it holds all the truth. There are many truths that exist and you can put all of those truths together and create something even more beautiful. And once again, we're going to talk about that on this podcast. So make sure you subscribe. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for subscribing. I'm very excited to see where this journey is going to take us. I have a lot of topics that I want to talk about: spirituality, my experience in finding God, my reincarnation story. I feel like I have reincarnated on this planet multiple times and I have been blessed with the memories of those experiences and I have been called to share them as well. That is something interesting that I cannot wait to share. I want to share some more on faith and belief, science and technology, art and spirituality. There's just like so much I want to talk about. And I have searched far and wide for podcasts that are going to talk about a lot of these things that I'm going to bring to the table. And I haven't found any of those podcasts. So that just made sense that I create something like that. And I hope that you're going to enjoy it. So tell your friends, tell your mom, tell your father, tell your sisters, tell your brothers. This is African Boy Bible. Have a great day.